What do you do in a stressful, high-stakes situation where you and someone else, like a key player, are in complete disagreement regarding a particular course of action? Like maybe you and your spouse can't agree on how to handle a rebellious child, or you and your siblings have super strong but completely different ideas on how best to care for an aging parent. Or like when you've been paired with a contentious coworker to work on a hugely consequential project, one that could potentially make or break your career, and you can't agree on anything. Hi, I'm Jennifer Slattery, an iBelieve writer and one of the hosts of Life Audio's Faith Over Fear podcast. And this morning, I was reflecting on how I tend to handle those challenging situations. On times when I've argued an issue, which usually only leads to increased tension and relational discord, rather than committing it to prayer, which tends to lead to increased peace and clarity and often divine intervention. So years ago, my husband moved our family quite literally across the country from Southern California to Louisiana for a career change, only to quit some 6 months later. Granted, I'm convinced now that he was following God's leading, although at the time, I was pretty freaked out about the situation. And as time went on and he didn't seem to be pursuing career options with the diligence that I thought he should, my anxiety increased. And my anxiety, it triggered my desire for control, which led me to pester my husband, because obviously I knew the best course of action, right? That was how I felt at the time. And if only my husband would come to see how right I was, then everything would be fine. But he had a different perspective, a different plan. But rather than coming together in prayer to seek God's perfect wisdom, we began arguing with one another. And here's the thing, that didn't help us reach an agreement. It certainly didn't give either of us peace, nor did our fighting with one another solve the problem. It actually made things worse by distancing us from one another. It pricked our pride. It ignited our sinful tendencies. But then one day my husband said, in the middle of an argument, "I need you to be strong." And those first 3 words, they hit me hard. They just kind of sliced through my fear, through my selfishness. I need you. That shined a light on my behavior, on the wreckage we were both creating, and it drove us both to Jesus. And after that, we quit fighting against one another and we started fighting for our marriage and for our family. We started turning to prayer. We leaned hard on Jesus, seeking his perfect wisdom and strength, trusting that he would lead us towards the best course of action. And he did. He brought my husband back to his original company, and God ultimately restored all that we had lost during his unemployment period. But more than that, God used that situation to bring us closer to him, closer together, and to a place of increased emotional and spiritual maturity. Whereas our arguing had only led to increased uncertainty and ugliness, prayer led to beauty, to emotional intimacy, and to peace. And I thought of this situation this morning as I read about a time when the disciples tried to cast out a demon, but failed. So scripture records this account in Mark chapter 9, but to paraphrase, Jesus had taken 3 of his disciples onto a mountain for what scholars refer to as the transfiguration. So that's basically when they caught a glimpse of his divinity. When they returned to the other disciples, they found them arguing with a group of religious leaders. And so Jesus asked what they were arguing about, and a child's father said that he had brought his demon-possessed boy to the disciples, but they hadn't been able to cast out the demon. So Jesus took care of the problem and commanded the evil spirit to come out of the child and to never return. And then, according to verses 28 and 29, and this is the New Living Translation, afterward, when Jesus was alone in the house with his disciples, they asked him, "Why couldn't we cast out that evil spirit?" Jesus replied, "This kind can be cast out only by prayer." And here's what struck me in that account. When they encountered this really big, seemingly impossible problem, rather than praying about it, they seemed to argue about it. And I wonder, and it made me think of how often I do the same. And when I begin to argue about those things, I'm really showing that my faith is in me, in my logic, in my ability to direct things and to convince somebody else, to change somebody else's mind and their heart. When I turn to prayer, however, when I rely on God through prayer, and when I invite those that I'm struggling with to join me in prayer, I demonstrate my faith is in Jesus Christ, that he truly does have the power to bring beauty from every situation and to guide us all towards his very best. I don't know what you're facing. I don't know what situations you're most tempted to argue about, to argue in. And I'm not saying don't present your perspectives, but there comes a time when we just say, you know what, I shared my thoughts on this. This is what I believe. I know what you believe. I know your thoughts. And I'm going to pray about this. Will you pray about it too? And then trust Jesus to bring good from the situation.